2014 UN General Assembly comes to an end, world leaders are giving themselves a pat on the back for attempting to tackle every problem from climate change to Ebola. But perhaps no achievement has been highlighted more by diplomats than an anti-terrorism resolution unanimously passed by the Security Council last week. All 15 members of the Council approved Resolution 2178, which condemns violent extremism and calls for member states to prevent funding for terrorists and crack down on their ability to travel. Sounds common sense enough. After all, who wouldn't get behind condemning terrorism? But some civil liberty advocates are concerned that the resolution contains similar elements as the USA PATRIOT Act, a 9/11 piece of legislation that codified much of the mass surveillance state and Fourth Amendment violations we see today. And despite these concerns, there's been virtually no scrutiny of the vagueness of the resolution's language and its specific provisions. So here to discuss how this resolution could change the behavior of world governments, I'm joined now by RT correspondent Marina Portnaya. Marina, let's start by outlining exactly what UN Resolution 2178 calls for with regards to restricting international travel and enhancing global surveillance.
Well, Abby, the resolution requires all UN member states to take a series of measures to prevent the movement and recruitment of foreign terrorist fighters. So, for example, law enforcement agents now have the authority to prevent and suppress what they deem as recruiting, organizing, transporting, or equipping of individuals who travel to a foreign country for the purpose of committing terrorist attacks. Officials can prevent people from traveling if they have, quote, credible information that provides reasonable grounds, unquote. But what that actually means, we don't know, because that statement wasn't defined in the resolution.
Extremely interesting there, because all we heard was kind of a round of applause that everyone can agree to this one measure, Marina. And considering that the UN is only as powerful as the member states that make it up, does this resolution actually have any legal backing behind it? And why do you think it was passed unanimously without much debate?
Oh, make no mistake, this resolution has a lot of backing, and it is legally binding because it was adopted by the UN Security Council. That means violating this resolution would be a violation of international law. You have to consider the climate under which the resolution was unanimously adopted. We just saw the U.S.-led coalition of airstrikes against Iran and Syria begin. The U.S. says it was to target Islamic State militants. Europe also just announced that 3,000 of its citizens have traveled overseas to join ISIS. The U.S. says at least 100 Americans have done the same. So with the fear over these foreign terrorist fighters growing, what country wants to be the one to veto or vote against a resolution that's allegedly aimed at combating an international threat? So here we have clearly all these countries of the Security Council agreeing on a text.
And so let's talk about the concerns here. Why are civil liberties advocates concerned with the text?
Well, Abby, if you read the text of the resolution, it requires governments to grant law enforcement authorities a wider scope to monitor and suppress the travel and other activities of suspected foreign terrorists. But how each country defines potential terrorists or jihadists is different. This could allow countries to monitor more people in the name of international security. Additionally, Human Rights Watch says the resolution is rampant with potential due process violations because the text doesn't articulate the process in which suspects would be denied their right to travel. And some critics say the provisions, some provisions of the resolution actually promote the idea that people can be prosecuted for their thoughts and beliefs, but not their actions. So basically, this resolution does not specifically detail what exact criminal conduct is a prerequisite for detention.
You bring up a really good point, which is that it's kind of all up to the discretion of these member states, Marina, of what deems a terrorist threat or extremist thought, radicalization. Of course, there's also worries from some advocacy groups about racial profiling, but it does say specifically that it would not base stereotypical profiling prohibiting travel. Is there any reason why those people should be concerned?
Well, yes, of course, the resolution does say that there should be no racial profiling used at all. But according to foreign policy, one provision in the resolution encourages states to employ what's called evidence-based traveler risk assessment and screening procedures. That means that they could include a traveler's previous itinerary for potential grounds for detention. That means that if an immigrant is visiting a family somewhere in the Middle East or North Africa, they're more likely to be stopped and questioned at the airport than someone that's visiting maybe the UK, for example. One counterterrorism expert has predicted that the resolution's warning to avoid racial profiling will be ignored, and that more people with long beards and skull caps will be taken out of line at airports than the guy wearing, a polo shirt or a suit and tie.
Right. I mean, of course, we hear that with stop and frisk, right? No, it's not racial profiling, but then you look at the actual statistics, and of course, that's what's going to be happening. Though, of course, there's also concerns that this resolution could be used for an excuse to implement repressive measures on populations as well. Why?
Well, because the resolution could end up giving states new tools to crack down on separatist groups or dissidents or activists by actually branding them as terrorists. Because critics say the text of the resolution, it is vague enough that it leaves it up to each country to decide who to target. Think about countries like Bahrain or Saudi Arabia who are already squashing political opposition groups. The fear is that now those said governments and other governments too, we shouldn't just limit it to them. It could be any country, can label anyone who's an inconvenience to them as a foreign terrorist fighter or suspected foreign terrorist fighter.
Marina, it's a shame that kind of ISIS has overshadowed the intense scrutiny over the NSA surveillance program that we've been seeing in years past. It's just really unfortunate that they're using this as kind of a linchpin to crack down even more. Thank you so much for bringing attention to it, Marina Portnoy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Abby.
We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.